Any good stories from the road?
Pipe up.
I wish we'd gotten to see a little bit more out of our punter.
I'm starting to puke.
It makes my stomach hurt.
Yeah.
I thought he was going to die.
I'm starting to throw up in my mouth a little bit.
He's on the probiotics.
Is Georgia playing the 1985 Bears this weekend or what?
A lot of Todd talk.
Rat poison proof.
They're mongoose.
We will not be hunted at the University of Georgia. I can promise you that. The hunting that we do will be done from us going the other direction.
Hey, y'all. Let me unmute myself. Let me welcome in the Jakes and Palmer Toms. This is the Georgia Show. Uncle Glenn Hartley is already in the mix. Guys, it feels like Georgia and Ohio State are about 8 years away from playing. I can't sit through all these press conferences anymore. I'm getting a little antsy. I don't know about y'all.
They're never going to play.
That's what it feels like.
They're never going to play. They announced that matchup like 6 months ago. This is like trying to watch one of those UFC fights. It's never going to happen.
Yeah, it's the build up for WrestleMania. Man.
Yeah, it's terrible. It's terrible. I mean,
my daughter's getting her driver's license next week. It's insane.
Yeah. Gunnar Stockton's got a grandchild, I hear.
Yeah. All jokes aside, welcome into the Georgia Show. Y'all hit subscribe if you don't already. I feel like a lot's happened, though, since the last time we spoke, in all seriousness. Mike Leach passing was just tough. I mean, that was something that was kind of breaking as we were live, I think, while we were on the air, which was just nuts to follow along with. So, obviously, everything that goes along with that, we are praying for the Leach family, and it's easy to be a little, be swept up in the moment in some of these stories, but that one has a real lasting impact on a lot of college football fans and SEC fans for sure.
Yeah, so, I mean, I told Roos this yesterday, and I think I told Palmer this as well. I mean, I said, I like a moron, I just left SEC Network on, and I had a hard time getting anything done, hearing all those stories. You know, Mike Leach, for years, has come across as kind of just an eccentric, lovable, affable, funny old man. You know, just a well-meaning, innocuous, would be cool to run into that guy today type old man. And pity's the wrong thing. Pity's the wrong word. It wasn't that. There was a softness that you felt for the man. Like almost like he had something about him that like he could get anybody to let him in. And I sat there and watched all that yesterday, and it was hard not to like see all that stuff and know you're never going to see it again and not get emotional about it. We lost something yesterday, and I don't know if we'll ever get it back is the thing. And that's the crappy part about it. I mean, we knew it was going to happen one day. Mike Leach knew it was going to happen one day. That obituary comment he made or eulogy comment he made was hilarious.
Somebody else's job to write it.
Yeah, somebody else's job to write it. I won't care. I'll be dead. And he's just in some of his philosophical stuff on death kind of came out too. I don't believe we just stop being. I think we evolve in a higher state above what we are right now. And I'm like, we can all hope, Coach Leach, because I hope I get to do it, and I hope I get to have some of those encounters that, people like Ross Dellinger and Steve Robertson and so many others. You saw so many articles about. Yeah, I just reached out to Coach Leach for a comment, and next thing I knew, we were in his office, and he I'll be honest with you. I've spent the better part of the last 24 hours searching on, hey, how can I get down to Key West? That's been the biggest Key West commercial I think I've ever watched. So,
yeah, I saw Rob Cassidy over at Rivals.
Yeah,
who, I used to work with, and he said, I got in contact with Mike Leach, and I talked to him, and he recommended a bar to me, and he said I went down to Key West, and I paid for almost nothing the entire time I was there. Like, I was so sad by it, and I think I told Roe this, he was a guy I felt like I knew. I think that you've run into a couple people like that over the course of your life that are just so captivating, so interesting. They're so irreverent. And I that's what I always appreciated about Mike Leach in terms of college football. I feel like everybody's so serious. Everybody's so businesslike. And there was just none of that. There was no pretense to it. It was just the guy was having fun, man. And, he said what was on his mind, and authentic. And I agree with you, Ro. I think that we lost something, and it may not be replaced in the game because, Mike Leach, for whatever people want to say, obviously there were some jobs that he wasn't suited for because people in power positions didn't, feel that he was the proper representative for their program. But I always appreciated everything he was about. And, I agree with everybody. There's a huge sentiment out there right now that says you need to change the criteria for the College Football Hall of Fame because Mike Leach needs to be in the College Football Hall of Fame.
Right.
If the only thing Mike Leach ever did in his whole career was drop that fake play sheet at Texas, he would deserve to be in the College Football Hall of Fame because that's the greatest college football story I've ever heard in my life.
The best thing I heard yesterday was Gene Wojciechowski call him a football bohemian.
Yeah,
and I was like, man, there's no other way to describe the man.
I like my buddy Chuck Ward over here, a good friend of mine, says the Louis Grizzard of college coaches, and that's a real wonderful way to put it too. But I never met the man. Wish I had. Very sad.
I didn't either, man. And I felt like I knew him, though. I felt like a lot of college football fans knew him if they didn't meet him or if they did meet him or if they spoke with him on the phone. It's like this guy was the real deal, and he was just curious. There was just this transparency about these gears turning in his head, the way he viewed the world, and everything he did on the football field, too. He wasn't just, famous because he was eccentric. He actually was a pain in a lot of people's asses between the hash marks too. And that's what earned a lot of respect from those guys that didn't operate the way he did. I saw a quote from him today that he said, being punctual is a habit of the board. And that if you don't immediately think of Nick Saban when you hear that quote, and he still operated that way and he still made it work. So this whole show won't be about Mike Leach. I know we've kind of, had our memoriams about him yesterday, but I think beyond this show, I just want to encourage people to not just brush this one off. If you weren't too familiar with him, go down some Mike Leach rabbit holes, educate yourself on that guy's career. He was certainly one of a kind.
And shout out to you, Wes. Like I said, I commented this on the board. I put it on Twitter, but when you invoke that memory, it took me right back. I can remember the moment where I was when you talked about watching Texas Tech beat Texas. Michael Crabtree catches that ball, runs it in for the touchdown, and I was in Jacksonville. And I think that so many Georgia people were at that time and probably tuned into that game. And that was just, to me, that was such a ubiquitous memory. It felt so personal to me, but then I realized how many other people that shared.
What year was that?
That was 08.
08.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely wasn't in Jacksonville that year.
Yeah, I was first time I'd ever been down. I didn't go to the game or anything, just went down with some knucklehead buddies of mine. I was a freshman in college. Just guys that I went to high school with. Not all of them even went to Georgia, but we were down there and the game was a little hazy. I'm not going to lie to y'all, probably for good reason. A couple of those games were in that time period and that stretch.
George Dickel.
But I do remember that game, and we just all collectively lost our minds in that Holiday Inn in Jacksonville or whatever we were staying in. And that's really what
stayed in it.
I don't know if I slept at all.
I don't think I've ever stayed at the same hotel twice in Jacksonville. So.
Yeah, probably because they stayed down.
I stayed in a Red Roof Inn there that nobody should ever be subjected to.
So that was the game. That was the game that put him on the map for me. Like I knew who he was, but I didn't really know who he was. Right. And then that showed me this guy means business.
Yeah, but between that, the one thing that didn't get brought up yesterday is Mark Schleybaugh throws out that column or that story every year about his dog getting loose on the field.
Yes.
And Mike Leach was the offensive coordinator for that game, and he was talking about how he got off on a tangent and talked about how he didn't know if the dog had long speed, but he was really quick. and he could and that's what made him really tough to catch that day, was because he was just so quick. And he kind of just, like I read a story by Ross Dillinger earlier today, and Ross was talking about how Mike Leach apparently had tracked a raccoon whenever he was in Pullman, Washington, through the snow.
Players Tribune, he wrote all about it.
Yeah, because he just wanted to see what he looked like. I couldn't remember who wrote that article, but it was a beautifully written piece, just like yours was too today, Wes. Whenever yours on our site, it was I can't imagine anybody who's met him writing anything more poignant than what you had to say. And it's just I just hope we're telling stories about him for a long time. And it's he did change the game. That's why he deserves to be in the Hall of Fame, not because of his record as a head coach, but because, like Kirby Smart said, you got high school kids whipping it around right now and playing outdoor basketball.
Yeah, I feel like if you only read that quote, you might take it as a dig, but I mean, I listened to it and I heard it. It's true. I mean, that's all anyone does in high school these days. That's how guys get trained up and how to play the sport now.
Yeah, just because the wave didn't go over your head doesn't mean you didn't feel it,
Yeah.
And that's kind of Mike Leach's.
That was a Leach quote.
College football.
That sounded like a Leach quote.
Hey, that was one I just made up just now. So me and Mike Leach, kindred spirits.
Did anybody see also the story about him having played touch football, possibly with Richard Ramirez, the son of Sam?
No, man.
Yeah.
You could almost do like one of those, like, here are 4 statements, 3 of them are true, and one of them is a lie, and I'd believe all of them about this guy.
I just hope somebody comes in and writes a book about him, and I hope they just name it Leach.
He was somebody on Twitter posted that story. They said they called him. They're talking to him for 20 minutes, and all of a sudden they heard a whistle blow, and they asked him where he was, and he was like, "I'm at practice." And they said they were like, "Well, I can let you go." And he was like, No, hold on. I want to get back to what we were talking about. And they ended the conversation, or it was a media day where he told him, I played touch football. And then the guy showed up on the front page of a paper. He was a serial killer. They tracked it down, and the timeline matches up with Richard Ramirez, the son of Sam.
What a life, man. Just insane. All right. Appreciate y'all putting up with our Leach conversation there. Appreciate y'all weighing in. I see we have some early comments here, some questions. Let's just get right to them. Jake Roos, you are on the clock right now. Andy Stowe asking if the Haynes Georgia visit is done. Is the door completely closed on this Dawgs legacy that's committed to Bama?
Yeah, it does feel like it's trending that way, to being completely closed. He's spoken very highly of Alabama for some time, obviously since being committed, of course. But, I think he's really tried to reinforce that point over the last couple weeks, especially. Chad Simmons did a great piece today where it dropped some intel, basically saying that, he expects that in a week, Justice Haynes is going to be with the Crimson Tide. So, that's kind of been the case, I think, all along. Georgia continued to push, and it felt like there was maybe a window at a time. But the nearer it gets to signing day, I think the more confident Alabama gets and should. And I think that he's going to be a great player, and he chose his own path. And I know people are upset and don't want to see Georgia continue to press. That's not the kind of player that you give up on. And especially when it's a legacy, especially when it's a guy like that. I don't see it for Georgia right now. I definitely didn't have him on my projected offensive mock class. Said to continue watching him, but don't see it for Georgia there. Think that Justice Haynes does end up with Alabama. And, kudos to the kid because he stuck to what he said. He made the commitment, and he's ridden it out. And looks like it's going to go that way. So
here's the deal, and I'm purely pontificating here, but when I think about a high school kid that has that much on his shoulders, that much of a legacy, I'm not putting words in the kid's mouth. Maybe I'm just totally making this up. But when you see a kid change course, you just assume he's going to go to Georgia. I mean, isn't there a lot to be said for a kid that just wants to do his own thing, make his own path? I understand it hurts to not have him in the Georgia class if you're a Dog. He's a great talent, but everything that goes into wearing that G, your dad was the hobnail boot wearer. I mean, I get it. If you take a step back, and not everyone's going to do this, I'm not making y'all do it, but if you do take a step back and choose to do so, I respect what that kid's doing.
I do too. I think that you have to some degree, because it's not easy, right? I mean, your entire life, everyone's told you you're the son of the hobnail boot, and when it's time and you emerge and you become the player that Justice Haynes is, the pressure is. I mean, I certainly can't fathom it. Nobody was trying to get me to come to their college, but it's unbelievable. And I think that it takes a lot. It takes a lot of balls. It takes a lot of gumption to kind of go out and chart your own course and say, this is the way that I want to go. I know a lot of people will disagree with the decision, and I certainly understand that as well. But ultimately, I think that you have to give a little bit of respect to the kid for making the commitment, and seemingly at this point, as of today, and I'm very careful to case that as of today, sticking to his guns, as it looks like he's going to.
What does it say about what Saban and Bama are still doing?
Huevos. No, I mean, there's a lot of, Ro, I think you've talked about this, right? Like, there's a lot of talk about the decline of Alabama, or this is the death throes of Alabama. And the fact of the matter is, Alabama's still a great team. Nick Saban's still an amazing coach, and whether or not he leaves anytime soon or not is, no one knows. I mean, I understand kids wanting to go there. I understand kids wanting to play under him. It speaks for itself. The track record of Alabama, Georgia is at that echelon, or entering it, if you want to look at it that way. But Alabama is the standard of college football. I would dare anybody to argue that with me. And so it's hard to argue with a kid who wants to go down that path. I get it.
Alabama's the standard, I would say, for, maybe 2 more games. If Georgia can if Georgia can go back to back national titles, it's
two more games.
Yeah, 2 more games. If Georgia can go back to back national title, I think, all of a sudden it's in dynasty. It won't have accomplished what Alabama accomplished over that period of time, but it will become the current standard.
Well, that's what I was saying. You're entering the echelon, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
I want to point something out about Alabama too here, about Justice Haynes. There's a very interesting very interesting dichotomy here of 2 teams kind of blasting into each other with varying philosophies. And it's not about a run pass split. It's about how many running backs are you going to do it with. And Alabama's done it with Derrick Henry, and they did it and they split the load a little bit there when they had Damian Harris and Josh Jacobs and Najee Harris. Okay. But once it became Najee Harris's team, well, then Najee Harris was the workhorse, and then it was Brian Robinson, and then it was Jahmyr Gibbs. And you can't tell me, these backs can talk all they want about how I want this and I want that, and I want them to take care of my body and all this stuff. When it comes down to it, you want to produce. Running backs want the football. And I think Georgia is going to be just fine at running back. We're watching it this year, guys. I mean, we're literally watching it with our own 2 eyes. That, Georgia's got Kenny McIntosh and Dejon Edwards and Kendall Milton. I don't think anybody would confuse any of those guys with DeAndre Swift or Todd Gurley. But they're really good football players, and they don't mind sharing the load, and they're not going to piss and moan and get their ass on their shoulders if they have to share carries. And, for those of you that have never heard that about it being on your shoulders, that means your head's, up the sphincter. But ultimately, like, they don't lose it over that, and they don't lose any culture. Georgia doesn't, miss out on anything. And you look down and you see, I think, 3 backs over 500 yards. And I think combined, you're probably looking at 1,900 yards just between those 3 backs. Throw Branson Robinson, Stetson Bennett, the rest of them in there, you're starting to look like a really formidable rushing offense. Georgia's over 200 yards a game. Their philosophy works. And if it's going to turn that top tier back off, so be it. What you've got right now is you've got fresh-legged Kendall Milton, who was a little bit injured earlier in the year, and you're fine with that. You don't have the Brian Robinson debacle like Alabama had last year, because Georgia's playing so many different backs.
How about this cat right here, Roderick Robinson?
Yeah, they got Roger Robinson, who is the California Player of the Year by Max Preps. Last time I checked, they had a lot of really good football players in California. Some pretty good skill guys too, running backs and stuff. They kind of, a lot of folks out there and some really good players. And this cat went to the same high school as Marcus Allen, Terrell Davis, and all them. But I mean, I'm not saying Georgia's doing it better than Alabama at running back, because Alabama's got two really good ones in this class.
Absolutely.
So they're going. Georgia's lost a lot of one-on-one battles to Alabama. They beat Alabama for Branson Robinson, but they've lost a lot of those one-on-one battles here these last few years. And I think a lot of it's had to do with, again, the running backs may say one thing when you're interviewing them about, hey, yeah, I don't want to be part of a group, but ultimately they want to carry the mail. Alabama's giving them a chance to do that, and Georgia's doing it its own way, and it's hard to argue with Georgia's way.
Well, and the other contention I have here is, look, you're not losing a kid to Michigan State, right? You're not losing. We're talking about Alabama. I mean, you're 1-2 in the recruiting rankings. These are the teams. I mean, since Kirby Smart's arrived, that's really what it's been, is Georgia and Alabama battling for 1 and 2. So you're going to lose some of these heads-up battles. Does it sting a little more because he's a legacy, because he's the son of Hobnail Boot, because he's an in-state kid? Yes, of course it does. But it's not an end-all, be-all to me. Would Georgia prefer for Justice Haynes to be in this class? No question about it. Don't think you can spin it any other way. It's a loss, right?
They're still trying, yeah.
And they're gonna try until that ink's dry. But I don't. Georgia has a great class. I think Roderick Robinson is a really, really good prospect. I think his film bears that out. And I think that, if they want a second back, which I do think that they do in this class, then you look toward the portal. Then you look toward this second recruitment period that begins after early signing day, which is where a guy like Andrew Paul came from, right? Who was making noise throughout the spring. So,
people forget. Andrew Paul is the people forget of the Georgia backfield. I mean, you talk about the portal. Look at how many Georgia running backs have left for the portal. They're not doing it because they believe in that rotation. They get what it's all about.
And I do think that's just part of it. I'm thinking it's maybe a bigger part of it, but I do think that's just part of it.
Well, Andy Stowe asked here, and I was going to ask, I'm glad he did. Do you think if Georgia had a featured back like Swift or Gurley, do you think that's how they would run the running back room? Is talent dictating the way Georgia does this stuff?
They've never gone feature back. I mean, they've come close. They've always had a lead back, a guy that had a little bit more than everybody else. But I mean, Chubb shared it with Michelle and Swift.
Gurley and Swift.
Swift shared it with Holyfield and Harrion. Harrion, shared it whenever he kind of had a chance to be the lead back. I mean, Georgia had 2 1,000-yard rushers right there for this first, the second and third years under Kirby. Did it back-to-back years after not being able to do it in school history. And now they've got kind of a 3-headed monster at the tailback position. So, they're just these guys.
It's probably, no, it's fair to call Kenny the feature back right now, right? I mean, he's getting the lion's share. He's not
1,000 total yards. Yeah, 1,100 total yards.
It's not like he's not sharing it with other guys, but he's getting more than his cut.
Yeah. He's their version of a feature back. He's not the feature back. Right, he's not out there getting 15 carries a game for you.
Exactly.
But yeah, I mean, Georgia. I mean, I think if they had a stud standout like that, if they had a Todd Gurley, he probably would be a little bit more of a feature back. But even Swift wasn't really ever treated like a true feature back. I mean, he really did share the load, especially that 2018 season when Georgia's offense was really good. And guys, listen, man, I mean, we're looking at it right now. And I know this might be a transition. It might be earlier than you wanted to go, Wes. I don't know.
I don't care. Perfect. There's no such thing as transition.
I think it's perfect. Guys, look at what we're probably, I feel like, going to see here very soon. Okay, and I'm just going to go ahead and let the cat out of the bag on what I think about this. Georgia lost a guy last year, a guy that was committed to him for a long time, and he's from Kirby Smart's hometown, and people were pissed. Smoke Bowie's in the portal today. He was a 5-star prospect in last class for a little while. I think he ended up a 4-star. Signed with Texas A&M because he kind of followed Nick Williams, another Bainbridge native over there. Nick Williams is going to Colorado. Smoke Bowie's in the portal. If Georgia wants Smoke Bowie, they're going to get him, period. If they push hard, if they really want to recruit him, if they do what he wants them to do to get him as far as attention goes, they're probably going to get him, almost certainly. And, that's why you continue recruiting Justice Haynes to the last minute. That's why you continue patting him on the back and saying, we love you, kid, because he comes out of that portal this time next year. They're going to want to be right there waiting on him.
Exactly.
And they might go to the portal to kind of replace, make up for the loss, because I think they're probably going to try to kick the tires on Marshawn Lloyd. I just don't envy the position Dell McGee's in right now, because it's not hard to sell a Roderick Robinson on, hey, we're getting a back in your class that you're going to have to compete with. It's a little harder to keep a young back at ease when you bring in a guy that maybe is a little bit more established and is already an SEC back. And next thing you know, Roderick Robinson's walking in looking up at everybody like junior, senior, third-year player, second-year player, fourth-year player. Palmer, what do you think of all this? Because I hadn't even heard your voice.
Palmer's asleep over here, man.
He's like a flamingo.
Palmer's taking it all in, taking notes.
Yeah, I mean, it's been 25 minutes and I haven't said anything.
Yeah.
That may be a first in my life, guys. I may not have ever gone 25 minutes before.
Palmer's really excited for chocolate.
We all went 25 minutes without talking when Tom Crean got announced as Georgia's head basketball coach.
Before my time, but I covered a fair share of Tom Crean basketball games. Thanks, Jake.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
That left you speechless too.
Exactly. I agree with you. I think that Georgia's running back room is perfectly fine where it's at. They've got a. You talked about it being transitioning to a three-headed monster this year. It really was that the last 2 years too, with Zamir and James as well, and Kenny waiting his turn. You really could go back to that 2017 season with Swift as the third back. They have consistently used lots of guys, and so it's not a problem.
Yeah, look at how Zeus went from I'm the 2 ACL guy, who's going to draft this guy off of the injury heap, and he gets picked up. James Cook had a lot to earn. He stuck it out and stuck around, and he earned it. Kenny Mack is earning it, 3-star guy, I believe.
No,
he's earning it.
And what it does is, and what's attractive to these running backs is, sure, you're not going to get the featured back load in college, but if you are able to take advantage of the opportunity,
what it feels like to me? It feels like, I think Palmer froze up. It feels to me like all of the criticism of Georgia not getting the 5-star quarterback often. You win games with who's on the team, and it doesn't really matter what it looks like. And I know
the guys they're getting drafted. I mean, that's the thing.
Totally.
And that's what I was going to say.
DeAndre Swift, James Cook, Zamir White, Sony Michel, Nick Chubb. These guys have all gone in the draft. Now they're not first-round backs, but that's a rare commodity in today's world.
You just rattled off 5 guys.
Yeah, that's a unicorn.
Yeah.
Well, and what is happening is that those guys are being sold that they can save their legs for the NFL. I mean, The NFL doesn't want to take a bunch of guys that are washed up.
They won't tread on the tire.
It's working out for DeAndre Swift, right? I mean, he's a feature back.
Yeah, 4 in the top 2 rounds. So,
right.
4. Because Swift and Chubb were taken on the exact same pick, which was, I think, 33 overall or 34 overall.
Sony
was the first.
You mean
first round.
years apart? Years apart.
Sony was the first.
Right?
Yeah, after
Sony was
Isaiah
the
went.
only first, and then Chubb and Swift went the exact same pick. I believe 33 or 34 overall.
Yeah,
2 years in a row.
35
round. Overall. It was 35 overall. They both
wonder how
went
Belichick feels about
round.
that one.
Tyson Campbell went 33 his year.
Yeah, and then Chubb and Swift both went 35 overall. I think Cook also went second round, and Zamir White went 4th round. All 4 of those guys tested real well that could test. I don't think Swift ever tested. He had
because that was in the COVID combine.
Yeah, that would have been COVID. Neither did Elijah Holyfield well. I
That's
mean,
right.
if he'd have sat those out, he probably would have got drafted too.
Probably would have. That was a
Um,
huge debate whether or not he should run and go
Yeah,
out there in the
1,000-yard
underwear Olympics.
back.
I'd love to ask Belichick. I don't know if I ever will because we don't talk to them. I don't know if anyone's asked him if he regrets the decision to pass up on Chubb. I was at Chubb's draft party the night they took Sony, and I was scared. I was ready to leave because I felt bad for him, but I was also like, dude, this guy's kind of getting snubbed here. And they looked at him. They loved Andrew Thomas, obviously, and it didn't work out. And I'm not taking anything away from Sony, but I mean, gosh, dude, can you imagine the hindsight of passing up on Nick Chubb?
And it looked really wise in the beginning because Sony looked so good in those playoffs as a rookie. I think he scored 5 touchdowns his first 2 games.
Right. It looked like it paid off in the short
and
term.
right.
And
then but that's why they drafted Sony. That's why they drafted Sony when they did. They drafted Wynn first, who hasn't turned out to be a bust, but hasn't been great either. He's had
Wynn is who I meant. I said Andrew Thomas.
But they drafted Isaiah Wynn first, and they took Sony. And the whole reasoning behind that was, let's get a late first-round running back. Let's let him be dynamic for 4 years. Let's use him up. Let's let him go. That's. I mean, Jerry Jones.
I don't think
said
they
that
got
about
4 years out of him though.
Yeah, I don't think they did either.
No.
But they ended up trading him before that. They could have got 4 years out of him. They didn't pick up his option like well ahead of time. Like on the first day, they could say what they were going to do about his option. They didn't pick it up. But that's what Jerry Jones initially said about Emmitt Smith too. Is they said, hey, we're going to take this running back. We're going to pick him up. We're going to use him, for 300 carries a year, and then we'll let him go. But he was so good, they forced his hand, and it looked like Michelle was going to be the pickup. And then, even when, Chubb finished that rookie year the way he did, he was actually over 1,000 yards for a minute and then got tackled for a 5-yard loss.
Yeah.
996. But it did look like a smart move out of the jump. And there were plenty of Georgia faithful who thought Sony Michel was the better back. You look there in the playoffs and what he was able to do against Alabama when Chubb wasn't able to do it in the Oklahoma game, how he won MVP and carried that one. I think a lot of people really
hurt.
Tony, yeah. And the funny thing about Sony
Nick had the injury concern.
Yeah. Sony turned out to be the one more vulnerable from that aspect. And all of a sudden, another thing I realized about Sony Michel too in the NFL is, where did the pass catching Jesse of a running back go that played at Georgia? Like I thought he was going to be James White.
Pass catching Jesse.
Yeah, pass catching Jesse.
That's what it said in the scouting report on NFL.com.
I think I heard Sean
Strengths.
Salisbury say that for the first time.
So,
Strengths, pass catching Jesse.
He's a football
Sony-
throwing Jesse.
Sony spent 3 years with the Patriots before they traded him to the Rams last season, and obviously,
Hey, you got a couple
that
Super
worked out
Bowls
for him there. And then to put that postseason, that 2018 postseason into perspective, he was the first player since Terrell Davis with more than 4 rushing touchdowns in one postseason.
Oh yeah.
I covered that Super Bowl, and I think that was the only touchdown in the game was Sony's.
It was yeah.
Such a boring game, and we were in the elevator, didn't even get to see it. Like, worked the career to try to cover one Super Bowl. It's in Atlanta, and you missed the only touchdown in the
And
game.
it was just
I was in that same elevator when Justin Fields faked the punt earlier that year.
Don't take that elevator.
I was standing next to Rob Say, and he said, "Is that Justin Fields back there faking that punt?" And I said, "Yes, it is." And that's when I knew everything had gone wrong.
Jake sent me down to the field saying, "Okay, hey Georgia, if they're about to win a second straight SEC championship, go get some video." And I come out onto the field with a couple of angry texts from people being like, "What just happened?" And I'm like, why is Justin Fields and Jake Camarda, why are they both walking off the field at the same time?
I knew Georgia was in trouble on that play because everybody in the photo lineup against the sidelines was like, "Oh, look, Justin Fields is out here. I wonder what's about to happen."
Dude, I saw it happening. I didn't know what was going on. I looked down because I thought an Alabama player was hurt. And it was one of the kind of the second level defenders closest to the Georgia sideline who was basically having a seizure. He was losing he was flailing about in a way that I never
on the fake punt, that play.
Well, he was like
before the play.
Fields ran on the field. Like he looked like me with a few tequilas in him and right above it
the Sky Lounge.
Little Drake, Lil Wayne comes on, just goes into the epileptic chicken, doing those kind of dances. But I just remember when that happened. You got to see Men in Black, the first one, the bug.
Yeah.
Yep. And he comes in, he's like in that rotten corpse, like sugar, water. Yeah, that's how I felt on the inside.
Yeah,
that's how my innards felt. Like it felt like the body was about to melt off of them. I was like, no,
don't do that.
Not only are you going to collapse and lose this game, but these people are going to blame this fake punt on me. I know they are, and I think they ultimately did at some point. So.
Yeah, we could have an entire if people wanted to relive it, we could have an entire show. Maybe that's our next
show one night.
Here's the thing.
Terrible Georgia moments that we can laugh about now.
I've never shied away from this, Wes. I mean, all four of us are Georgia graduates. I went to Georgia. I went to games as a student. I snuck alcohol in the stadium. I had a couple of those airplane bottles.
As Roos likes to say, who among us
inside of my jeans, like the brown water, done it all. I used to be a Georgia fan. I tell you what, the more I've thought about it, the more
water bottle works the best.
The more losses do me worse now than they did then. And here's why I say that. Then it was just an individual thing, like I could get it off of my mind. Now I have to go to work to it.
Yeah.
And
now no one
like
to come and talk with us if Georgia loses.
I've got the pain of thousands. The pain of thousands.
You're a Christ-like figure.
Yeah. I mean, I hate to go sacrilege like that, but I mean,
hey, Notre Dame literally has Jesus in their football stadium backdrop, and he is more part of the football backdrop than the religious culture.
Hey, I got to tell Matthew C something here real quick. You can laugh about it now. You won the title. You got a chance to win a second.
Come on, Matthew.
Every foible that happened in the past, you can just laugh about them now.
You knew it was going to be worth it one day.
You're a champion.
Fortunately, you're here to see it.
You may be
you're the current champion. You're not only a champion, you're the current reigning champion.
Yeah, you're the reigning champ of both the SEC and the nation.
Yes.
I will let's see here. Let me get this comment off. No offense, Matthew C. So let's talk about the transfer portal a little bit more. I think obviously smoke is a big development here over the last 24 hours. But when you talk about talk about this receiver boon that Georgia wants to go after, what is happening there, Jake Rowe?
I'll start with Marshawn Lloyd out of South Carolina. I do think Georgia's gonna make a run there. I don't know how hard. Again, I think Dell might be in a tough position there. If I'm just opining here, I think he might be in a tough position there from what's Roderick Robinson going to do? But he's also in a tough position as far as numbers go, because if you look at it, Robinson, Andrew Paul coming off an ACL, Branson Robinson, and probably Dejon Edwards for sure. Those are the four I think you can probably count on. But maybe not. Dejon Edwards can go pro too. So then you got four. Well, what's Kendall Milton going to do? I think Kenny McIntosh is gone. I think Kenny McIntosh has to kind of capitalize on the season that he's had. He's got a year to come back if he wants. What's Kendall Milton going to do? Well, if Kendall Milton is definitely going to come back, Georgia's going to be just fine. And it may take a second window pickup for them, and they may get something big out of the second window. Maybe they could get a Will Shipley or somebody kind of moving out of their current situation. I don't know. But that's something you're looking at. And then as far as the receiver position goes,
Jake, I'll stop you before you get into the receivers, because I don't know that they're fine with just 5 running backs. I mean, Kirby has said before,
well, that's typically been the number.
Well, Kirby has said before that they prefer to have 6, that they've been at a deficit the last couple of years and had 5. And we saw how 5 can turn into 4 very quickly. When
somebody needs to tell Toenail Carter
here. Say what?
Toenail.
Somebody
Ooh, what a deep dive you just
needs to
pulled.
tell Tennille Carter that, because
Ooh,
Tennille
boy.
Carter was pushed out of a class because he was the sixth back.
He
I'm
was.
just joking. But no, I mean, you're probably right. I mean, I think some cases they would like 6, some cases they'd like 5. Kirby's has been known to change his tune there before too. Dude told me one time they want 5 inside linebackers that they can rotate. And then I asked him, he's like, well, we don't have a number of linebackers we want to rotate. I think sometimes maybe he just lives in the moment. But either way, I think they need at least 5.
Well, and that was right after the Andrew Paul stuff. So he was probably thinking the more the merrier here.
Yeah.
Well, and that's exactly my point too, is like you talked about the second wave, and that's what's so important. And I keep reminding people of this. Think of like a guy like Brett Seither, right? I mean, no one had heard of Brett Seither prior to the early signing day.
Are we when we say the second wave, are we talking about the second wave of transfers that happens in May after spring practice, or the February signing day? Or both. I mean,
either way. I'm just thinking past early signing day in this scenario. I mean, there essentially becomes a new evaluation period for any number of thousands of kids across the United States. And Andrew Paul was chief among that last year. Brett Seither was like that. I mean, it's a situation where they're going to go back to the drawing board. Do they maybe go to the portal? Yes, that's possible. But also, it's incredibly possible, I think, that they turn back toward the high school ranks and find another kid and dig him out like they did with Paul last year.
Yeah, they could do that. They could, they could go Marshawn Lloyd. They could look and see what comes into the portal in the second window that opens up. They've got options. They could go with 6. They need a minimum of 5 though, and I think that's where maybe they do want to add another one with whether Kendall Milton comes back or not. I don't know, but I think they can operate with 5, and I do suspect that missing out on Justice Haynes is probably going to push him in that direction, and they'll move on there, because then you'll have Dejon Edwards will be kind of the old head around, and again, he's not guaranteed to come back. I mean, worst case scenario, Georgia's got 3 backs. Best case scenario, Georgia's got 5 backs, and either way, Palmer, your point stands on they might add another come hell or high water.
And don't forget too, Dejon Edwards, a bit of a late take in his class. After the Tank Bigsby thing fell apart, and
they recruited him pretty hard. Like
they did, they kept it consistent. But I think Evans and Bigsby were the 2 right that they were trying to shoot for in that class. They missed on those guys, and Dejon was people considered him. I don't even know that they considered him a bronze medal. He's turned into a pretty damn good player, and was.
Yeah, and I don't know if that was necessarily their plan going in, but this staff is flexible, and they get the most out of the guys that they need to get it out of. I mean, Andrew Paul getting hurt, how much did we hear? We haven't talked about it in months now, but I feel like it was a pretty hot button thing. Everyone kind of knew, like, Andrew Paul was making waves, and then he got hurt, and Branson, I think he had his moments. He had a big moment against Auburn. I think Auburn, not taking anything away from him, I think Auburn had thrown in the towel. Throw in the damn towel. That's what Auburn had done.
It's also the only time he got even remotely lathered up.
Right. That's what, like, he had a chance to do it.
Yeah.
Against them. But yeah, it's a totally different running back situation if Andrew Paul is healthy this year. I don't know if we answered the wide receiver transfer portal.
We did not. Here's where we stand. Here's where it stands on the wide receiver standpoint. They've offered, that we know of, that have that we're positive of, 3 guys, and that is Dante Cephas from Kent State, Ra Thomas, who was in town for an unofficial visit Saturday through Monday, and I'm told that went really well, and then Dominic Lovett out of Missouri. Ra Thomas and Dominic Lovett are 100% the top 2 targets. I don't know if Georgia can get them both, but it would be a home run if they did. At that point, let's say Georgia stays whole at the pass catching positions with Brock Bowers, A.D. Mitchell, and Lab McConkey sticking around. Georgia would have 5 guys with legitimate 800-plus yard potential if they were to get Dominic Lovett and Ra Thomas.
800 yards. You're breaking up a little bit.
Yeah, legitimate 800-plus yard potential. I think Georgia's going to have a good to decent shot at each of these guys. It's just tough to say whether they've really got a chance to land them both. You tend to think they might scare each other off a little bit. I think Ra Thomas is probably the best, shot right now. We'll see if they can get him to shut it down before he visits Auburn this weekend. He's from Eufaula, Alabama, which is very, pretty close to Auburn, very close to Albany, Georgia. So, you're going to, or Albany, sorry, I shouldn't say Albany since I'm from down there.
How dare you?
No excuses for that. I'll do some push-ups. And then, so those are the main two. I don't see Dante Cephas visiting right now. It seems like interest is elsewhere. I've kind of had some communication with Tez Walker, also from Kent State, the kid who had over 100 yards against Georgia this year. Doesn't sound like they've shown any interest there, and he really wanted both Georgia and Alabama to offer. He's got like 7 offers now. He'll be at UNC here pretty soon. Just got back from Rutgers. And we'll see kind of how everything else works out. But I think Georgia is going to have a good shot there with those. And I think Dominic Lovett there's a good chance that he's going to be on campus starting tomorrow for what I believe would be an official visit. And, they're doing the photo thing. Palmer wrote a story today.
Just like recruiting.
They're doing the photo thing with the players. I mean, listen, Ra Thomas did it big. Dude put on a King outfit and took pictures of Brian McClellan and Kirby Smart.
Somebody on Twitter said transfer guys don't get the same blessed to receive an offer again. Yes. We've been through this with you already.
Let me ask you this, Jake, because where they're at, both Jakes, that is, where they're at right now, they have 11 guys on scholarship at wide receiver, and that's counting Cole Spear.
Why wouldn't you count Cole Spear?
Yeah, I mean, the thought that maybe he blue shirted or whatever, but
no, I'm just messing with you.
You've got four wide receivers committed in this class. That brings them to 15 before you can consider the fact that they may go get a transfer. Are you thinking that somebody's leaving that room?
No question. Absolutely. Someone's
got to be heading out.
You had so many. You had a few guys get acknowledged there at senior day. I think I would be shocked if they didn't lose at least 2, maybe 3.
And I guess that's what I was more curious about is like the number that you think they do lose, because what'd they lose last offseason? They lost Jermaine Burton, Justin Robinson, Jalen Johnson, but he wasn't on scholarship.
He was on scholarship, yeah.
He was?
Yeah, but he wasn't like a guy that you really, fans really freaked out about losing. The reason, they've got to get more bodies, and they've got to get more game-ready bodies because
it's because of what happened this fall. And we touched on that last week, right?
In a sense, man, it doesn't really matter. None of these freshmen matter that Georgia's bringing in, not for 2023. That's the way they've got to think about it. Obviously, they're going to try to get them ready to play because there's some talented dudes in there. But they need guys ready to play because Georgia was one play away. Georgia was that play in the SEC championship that got Lab McConkey hurt away from absolute disaster for 11 straight games this year.
So what you're looking at is instead of them having 11 currently, you're looking at them having 7 currently. And then
probably more like 8, maybe.
Yeah, because you can throw Dylan Bell into the guys.
Kirby spoke about it it was early in the season, maybe fall camp, but someone asked him about expecting freshmen to make the most of their opportunities. He talked about A.D. Mitchell, talked about Ladd. But to his point, he's like, you look at the skill player positions, they are statistically more likely to transfer. Therefore, you're statistically less likely to have seniority and depth at receiver specifically, which was pretty interesting that they've already been able to kind of tabulate specifically in those specific areas of need. Like, all right, these guys are just going to be harder to keep in the stable.
Well, and it's the position that you need the most depth because they do have, statistically speaking, the most soft tissue injuries that you're dealing with.
Because they run the most. They cover the most ground. And one thing I think we've also learned with this Todd Monken offense is they will take a freshman, throw him out there and live with it. They'll live with the lumps and the bumps and the bruises. Jermaine Burton, Dylan Bell both did it back to back. Yeah, Jermaine Burton did it. A.D. Mitchell did it. Dylan Bell did it. 3 back to back to back. Not more than that though. A Tyler Williams.
I guess my question
Evans, maybe one of those guys you can kind of count on stepping in and playing major snaps for you. but ultimately they can't be in the same position they were last year, especially when you consider that Darnell Washington's probably not going to be around this year and be that kind of take up a 12 personnel spot. They have Oscar Delp to go right there with Brock Bowers. But then again, when you lose experienced players, the chain, kind of it just moves on down the line, right? So you lose Darnell Washington. Oh yeah, bro, Oscar Delp's going to step out. Well, who's going to step into Oscar Delp's old role? Do they have anybody specifically ready to do that?
Right.
And then that's kind of where you get yourself there.
And I guess my question is, we determined a number of 5 or 6 running backs that you want to have. What's that number you think at wide receiver?
Well, I'll tell you right now,
if 11 is not enough, where they feel like
they get Dominic Lovett and Ra Thomas, they're going to run some off, and they probably want to. I mean, I'm not trying to be.
I'm looking at the roster. I've been over here reviewing the roster, right?
All right, producer Roos.
The three names that jumped off the page to me.
Front office Roos over here.
Yeah, I was going to say GM Roos about to make some cuts.
No, I mean the 3 names that jump off the page to me. Anybody want to take a stab?
Well, we had Uncle Glenn.
Anybody below 96 speed, 95 acceleration.
Well, they're not making the cut. I promise you that at Oregon, my 2000.
Matthew C. and Uncle Glenn Hartley asked about Kyrus Jackson and Blaylock's eligibility.
Kyrus and Dom both have eligibility left.
Yeah.
Kyrus has 1 year, his COVID year. Dom has 2, I believe.
Kyrus would be a 6th-year senior. Dom came in.
I think Kyrus is ready to try it to go.
Dom would be in his 5th
feeling.
year, but of course there's a redshirt year in there because of the injury.
Yeah.
Now
so Dom has 2 left.
I didn't really factor either of those guys in. Although I could understand if you brought 2 transfer guys in, why either of those guys would consider trying to go somewhere
and both
else.
of those guys are slot guys. So you guys tell me something. If you think those 2 guys are going to leave or candidates to leave, and you're really focused on bringing out outside receivers, I think it stands to reason that they want to take number 84. McConkey. They want to take Lab McConkey, and they want to put him in the slot. And they probably want to put him in the slot with AD, Dominic Lovett playing outside of him. And then Georgia with Brock Bowers at tight end gets really, really nasty looking in the passing game.
If they can stay healthy.
Yeah. And I've disagreed. I have disagreed with Aaron Rodgers' brother. What's his name? Jordan Rodgers. I disagreed with Jordan Rodgers and Aaron Murray at different times, and some other guys talking about how Georgia just doesn't have the outside guys. I don't think that's right. I think they're weaker.
You know what that is with Jordan? Jordan called that Missouri game when no one could get open. Yeah. And I've heard it too, Jake. He has copied and pasted that analysis of Georgia's skill players for the entire season after that one game.
Yeah.
Well, and they didn't have AD Mitchell in that game. They had Arian Smith that was his first game back.
And Ladd was putting it on the turf.
Yeah,
Ladd was dropping them, at that point in the year. So it was,
right.
it was
my 3 names. Now let me, after our 10-minute tirade here in between that, the guys that make the most sense.
I haven't talked about the defense once. We have 2 unanimous All-Americans on defense that I know Palmer's itching to get to. Haven't talked about the defense once. Go ahead, Jake.
The current roster, right? There's 3 names that jump off the page to me as potentials. I'm not saying this is going to happen, but guys that I think I would be interested in seeing how they were going to handle 2 guys coming in. Jackson Meeks.
That's the first guy I was going to guess.
One of my names.
Absolutely. CJ Smith, a freshman, and Denylon Morrison.
Yeah.
I think the 2 lesser used freshmen and a sophomore who has not necessarily found his role yet. And I'll tell you this.
Special teams.
I agree. And I think Jackson Meeks is a hell of a receiver. I think he can work the sideline. His high school tape was really, really impressive to me. I liked what he was able to do there. I thought he was a good kid.
But I mean, if we're going to be brutally honest here, the fact that Georgia's looking for 2 outside receivers in the pool kind of tells you what they think about him.
Bingo.
At the receiver position, probably love the hell out of him. Probably would be like, hey man, please stay.
Yeah.
Please stay.
Let me ask y'all this. When we talk about these outside receivers that could be looking for other opportunities, Marcus Rosemy is going to be in his 4th year. He's not going to be the number 1 receiver.
A guy that could get scared off.
Say what?
A guy that could get scared off if you sign two.
And he has a role. He's proven that this year with no AD Mitchell that he can do it.
Yep.
But if
took him a little bit of time, took him some games to get to become that guy. But
that would be, maybe he doesn't get run off because right now, guys, he's probably 5th, 6th option right now, and he's thriving, and he's seems to be a very big time team player. I mean, does he want to go somewhere after winning a couple of national championships and try to put up numbers, or does he want to kind of lean on his game? I mean, Kearis Jackson said all the right things, but he's a guy that you want to look at. I mean, I think pretty much everybody. I mean, Arian Smith, nobody wants. It's not like he's not Jerry Rice. As Dana Dawg pointed out not too long ago. Quit talking about this man like he's Jerry Rice.
Dylan Bell's safe, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, right? I think Dylan Bell's a guy that they're safe on. I mean,
Dylan Bell and McConkey, those two are safe. I would throw
AD Mitchell, I believe, can enter the draft. I think it would be very, very foolish to do so. And if he doesn't, I pretty much feel really good about him coming back, unless for some reason he got scared of Georgia bringing a couple.
Unless he gets a little bit of Jermaine Burton in his ear.
Yeah.
Who was that? Arian?
No, AD Mitchell. But I'm not too concerned about that because of the way that worked out.
We're in conspiracy theory.
Yeah, I think what we're getting to is that too many receivers is not going to be a problem.
Yeah.
And if they've got too many receivers, I think they'll just live with it. Because one thing about receivers over offensive and defensive linemen is they not only can play special teams for you, they can play on just about all the special teams for you. If you're not protecting on a field goal, you are almost not going to play as a lineman on special teams.
Yeah, you've got the 2 personal protectors, maybe
on punt, and that's basically it. Rushing field goals, but covering punts, blocking, punt return, kick return, all that stuff is usually, reserved for freakish, talents and skill players. Trayvon Walker and Michael Williams has played it too. So I mean, they've had some good guys. I don't think we're in a realm where receiver is going to be an issue. But I will say this: it's not going to shock me if Georgia ends up taking 4 or more players out of the portal this year. After not taking any last year, I think they want 2 receivers.
I think you were at 3 the last time we talked, so now you're at the 4th.
I feel like Palmer kind of sat back and took a breath when you said.
Well, I mean, look, guys. I mean,
would you be surprised if they only took?
Palmer needs a handkerchief.
They want at least 2 receivers.
He's getting the vapors.
They want at least 2 receivers. Smoke Bowie's in there, and I really believe Georgia's going to take him, and they're probably going to get him. They're not going to get Justice Haynes, so you're looking at a running back. I think that, and then they might, if it's the right 3rd receiver, they might take a 3rd receiver. They might try to take a 5 technique. I mean, you telling me if a stud 5 technique jumped into the transfer portal, they're not going to be all over them?
No question in my mind. If the right guy came in at an edge or a 5, there's no question in my mind he may jump to the number 1 want in the portal for Georgia. In my opinion.
It may jump to the number 1 want after they sign this class.
I agree.
Listen, we're not going to BS you here. They need to get Sam Mpemba and Gabe Harris and Damon Wilson.
They need to get Damon Wilson
signed on the dotted line, and then they need to go find some support for the edge position, whether it's the defensive end or whether it's an outside linebacker.
So I know Kirby doesn't like hypotheticals, but clearly we've gotten into them here. I'll throw one more y'all's way. And Roos, you touched on.
If Kirby wants to, bitch and moan about hypotheticals, he's welcome to come on the show.
We welcome it. We welcome it. In fact,
come to our house, Kirby.
I think within the next 5 years we can get Kirby on the show. That's a goal. I have it written down, and I think we can make it happen.
Kirby Smart, what do you know about throwing at?
My question becomes. You've got 4 scholarship quarterbacks right now. One of those does not have eligibility left, and that's Stetson Bennett. You're down to 3. You're not currently slated to sign anyone in 2020.
Are we sure Stetson Bennett doesn't have the infinity gauntlet?
He very well could. He very well could. But
I don't know what's going on with all y'all's internet tonight. I don't think Stetson has eligibility.
He doesn't.
Point is, you're down to 3 scholarship quarterbacks that have eligibility.
He might take Buster Faulkner's job, though.
You're down to 3 scholarship quarterbacks that have eligibility remaining. One of those between Carson Beck and Brock Vandegrift is assumed to be leaving at some point, probably after spring practice, once they've gotten a chance to duke it out a little bit. Do we think Georgia goes after a quarterback in the portal?
No, I don't.
mean, do we think that they feel comfortable with 2 scholarship quarterbacks?
No,
it has to be Dan Marino coming through a time portal.
They would love to find a Stetson Bennett in the transfer portal.
Yeah, but the deliberate nature of quarterbacks in the portal makes it really, really tough because, you know, those quarterbacks have standards too, and they're not really trading in, you know, they're not really trying to transfer in to be a backup.
So can you find somebody in the second cycle of 23 recruiting? I mean, I
don't see them going that way. I think Georgia is okay to move into the spring.
That's what we saw with Arch Manning, right? And outsiders can say it's sour grapes all they want, but we've kind of established that going after Arch was just kind of gravy, right? Like, we get them, we don't. We're going to survive.
They aimed high on a couple, 2 or 3 other guys.
Yeah, they made runs at a couple other names that people would be familiar.
I think right now, I mean, Jackson Arnold was one of them.
Yeah.
I think we're free to
former president.
Put that out.
Yeah.
Jackson Arnold was one of them.
Yeah, he was Secretary of Treasury, I think.
They made a run at that kid that was committed to Baylor.
But I think that they've made a run at a couple of guys, right? They checked in on a couple guys. From everything I've been told, Georgia is okay to move into the spring with things as they stand because they believe that all 3 of those guys will make it through the spring. Now, what happens after the spring is TBD. But
that's what I'm saying is you have to find somebody in February, assuming that one of those guys is going to leave. Otherwise, you got to take somebody from the portal. Otherwise, you're left with 2 scholarship quarterbacks.
And Georgia's done it before. They did it with Jake Fromm and Justin Fields.
Then they went out and got 2 scholarship quarterbacks so that they could have 3.
And then they had 2 again. And then they had 2 again because Dwan Mathis had a hole in his head.
That was because Dwan Mathis had brain surgery. They did not.
But I'm just saying they know it's possible.
What I keep telling people too is you have to remember Darian Kendrick.
I thought you were about to say Jackson Muschamp.
No, JT Daniels, Darian Kendrick. Those guys both showed up well into
JT Daniels is in
the latter part of the year.
JT Daniels is in the portal. Are we going down that?
Don't how dare you invoke that?
I tell you what, guys, listen, I gotta throw a wrench in this real quick. Would it not be the most JT Daniels thing ever to be the first guy to revisit the same school?
I said the other day, would it not be the most Georgia
but he
thing
went to
ever?
Junior college.
Would it not be the most Georgia thing ever?
Yeah, but he went to West Virginia.
I know. I'm talking about going to of course, Palmer. I'm saying to go from
wire to wire portal guy,
FCS school to another or FBS school to another. Man. I don't know that it's. I mean, and then come back. It's never been done.
I think he's a possibility for Buster Faulkner at Georgia Tech, but I'll leave that there.
Yeah, it could be.
None of this stuff makes sense. That's the problem. There's these windows that
there's no precedent.
The windows that we talk about are suggestions at best. I mean, these guys people continue to show up. They continue to find ways to transfer.
Oh, it's just like NIL. I mean, exactly. It really is. It's just like NIL. And the funny thing is I never thought in a million years that we could take all of this money and bubble it up to the surface on top of the table, and the complaining about getting paid would get even worse.
Okay, so I'll just
Dave Biddle is over there just crying in his cereal about Georgia getting some in on Damon Wilson. Dave Biddle, you're free to come on the show as well.
I guess what I'll say here is
all takers.
We'll take on all comers.
I guess what I'll say here is
don't flip it.
Do you think Georgia goes into 2023 with 2 scholarship quarterbacks?
I think it's a very real possibility. Very real. I think it's a very real possibility.
Yeah.
The co-defensive coordinator's son will be the third quarterback.
I'm not going to cross it off of the. I'm not going to cross that off the possibility.
Because honestly, I think if Brock Vandegrift,
Austin Kirksey's dad is the defensive coordinator.
Is he still around?
I don't think so.
God, he was on the 17 team.
Colin Drake, I think, is the other. Austin Kirksey was on the 17 team.
But here's the thing: you look at you can't avoid it. You can't really avoid it. Not and get somebody better than one of your walk-ons, really, because if you go through spring, you've got 3 going into the spring. No quarterback really wants to jump into that situation either, where you've got 3 competing for the job.
I don't think the portal. Yeah, it could end up being,
especially not right now.
And 24 is taken care of already.
Yeah,
right.
You have to remember that. So it's not like this is a long-term problem that's going to continue. And they'll probably, if that were to be the case, right, they can continue to recruit 24 for a second guy. I don't know that they'll do that, but 24 is set, right? The two quarterback situation, to me, I think I do think it's very possible. The constant refrain I have heard essentially since, I would say, probably early August, which was the last time that I heard about Georgia really making a kind of a serious run at Jackson Arnold, around that time frame, has been no, they're not going to do it. It's not going to be a second guy.
And I think if you're Georgia and you're talking about your roster spot right there, I think the one way you do have to treat it, to Palmer's point, is, all right, the loser of the competition, the guy who doesn't win the competition in the spring or looks like he's further behind because they're not going to settle in the spring, between Beck and Vandegrift, I think you've got to kind of hold that spot for what it is. And it's a quarterback spot. And then, if one of those guys walks after spring, let's say April, whatever, May, whatever, probably on a
May 1st is the next portal entry date.
Yeah. Okay. So then, let's say May 1st, one of those guys jumps in the portal. Georgia,
so go ahead and pre-write and schedule your story on Brock Vandegrift for May 1st.
Well, it may be Carson Beck. I don't know. I don't think Gunnar Stockton's going anywhere. But
no.
Yeah, I don't think it will be either. But I don't want to count Brock Vandegrift out completely either, because he's a really good player. But I think what you kind of go into there is you're like, all right, well, if one of those guys enters, then you deal with that. Then still going to be incredibly tough to get a quarterback at that point. But I think you're more likely to find a quarterback in the May 1st portal window that is transferring maybe for a better situation, but maybe knows it's going to be find it a little bit tougher to find a place to start. And you can find a guy, and he may be a 1-year rental. I mean, he may be a guy that comes in and does something for you and graduates.
Mercenary.
A mercenary that graduates over the summer or something, and he's gone by the next season. Yeah. At least you got a third in there. It's just all going to depend on how they feel about that, how they feel about their walk-ons, and how they feel about their spots. I just don't think they can get, and they know more about roster management than I ever will, but I just don't think they can get too aggressive and get over the number like they've been doing, to where they have to lose transfers and then they don't lose enough that they can't go get another quarterback.
How about those 2 first-team defenders?
Yeah.
All right.
Unanimous All-Americans.
Here's the deal. It's hard to get quarterbacks. It's hard to get your situation right. It's not hard to get a T-shirt from Breaking T. The mailman has a couple options for you guys if you want to check that out. Quite a few, actually.
Walk-on's a nice one.
If you're a big
Brock Bowers could be a backup quarterback for.
So apparently we got it in the comments here from Andy Stowe. Austin Stogner went to Oklahoma, South Carolina, back to Oklahoma.
Did he just announce?
Good job, Andy.
Back to Oklahoma.
Wow, listen, Andy over here. We need Andy as our stat guy, man. He's our research. He's our research guy over here.
He's our top Georgia shower. Our golden shower.
Do you like that?
Guys, let's chop some wood. We have been talking
he's coming
so
back.
much about the portal. I think that we are really onto something here. We need a portal show, just a total portal show. Palmer, let's chop some wood about the guys I teased earlier.
Yeah, these the duo of unanimous All-Americans that Georgia's got on the defensive side of the football. It's rarefied air, man. I mean, Georgia has done something special here. I went back and looked at how many unanimous All-Americans Georgia has had in its history. The answer there is 13. Goes back. First one, it was in 1942 with Frank Sinkwich. Charlie Trippi was on there. Herschel Walker was on there 3 times. Garrison Hurst, Royce Smith, Drew Butler, Jarvis Jones. All those were between 1942 and 2012.
Logan Gray was on there, I think.
Georgia had 7, 9 if you want to count Herschel's 1, 2, and 3. 7 in 92 seasons. They have had 6 in the last 6 seasons.
So you're telling me that Kirby Smart is developing talent?
That's exactly what I'm telling you. Roquan Smith in 2017, Andrew Thomas in 2019, and then back-to-back years with a duo of defensive players, unanimous All-Americans, Jordan Davis and Nakobe Dean last year, Jalen Carter and Christopher Smith this year. Georgia certainly has established itself under Kirby Smart as the best spot in college football to play defense. Like I said, 5 of those 6. Shout out Andrew Thomas as the only offensive guy. But 5 of those 6 that Kirby has had have been on the defensive side of the football. And it says a lot about what Jalen Carter has done this year coming back from injury. I don't want to hear any character concerns with him. And B, what Chris Smith has done.
I mean, might as well address that. What's the deal with that?
I haven't heard anything.
You're muted, Jake.
Todd McShay's just really stirring the pot right here.
I'm hoping I'm hoping it's the Falcons that are putting that out there.
Yeah, but he's stepped in it like twice in 2 weeks with Jackson Smith and Jigba and Jalen Carter.
Yeah.
I mean, guys, I don't doubt that he's probably heard some scouts say there are some character concerns. I mean, he almost got into a fight before the Missouri game. They're trying to pick kids apart. It doesn't mean it's a major issue. It doesn't mean they think he's hiding bodies or anything. It just means that they just kind of worried that maybe he doesn't have the best judgment. And I'm not standing up for Todd McShay when I say that. He should have worded it differently. That was BS the way he kind of just laid it out there and let people take
very
it.
Very vague. That wasn't the best.
It was trolly. It was kind of troll like the way he did that, and whatever. I mean,
ask Jaden Daniels about.
Todd McShay seems to be in good health now. That's what matters.
Yeah, I'm not going to go there, y'all. Jaden Daniels can testify about Jalen Carter's character decisions because Jalen Carter could have murdered him.
Didn't slam him down to the ground.
God, some of the memes of like him holding up a child in an LSU thing are just so great.
No, really underrated moment. In the moment, it was cool to see. I didn't know at the time it was going to result in all these fantastic memes. I'll pick up the next chopping wood. I'll pick up the axe here. I'm going to chop wood about a lot of the Ohio State fans I've seen talking about a Mercedes-Benz Stadium takeover, and they are basing this on the fact that they sold out some sort of allotment of their tickets within a certain amount of hours or days or whatever. I don't know. They bought up a lot of tickets, and that's great. They're a fantastic top 5 college football fan base. I think Georgia and Ohio State fans are long overdue for this melting pot of scarlet and red and black and gray and all this. It's going to be great. I will just warn you that regardless of how many tickets you think you got, Georgia has more. And that's just the way it's going to go. And I'm not saying that you won't travel well. I'm just saying temper your expectations. I saw a lot of LSU fans too for the SEC championship game. They like to party in Atlanta as well. But it's just different when you play Georgia at Mercedes-Benz Stadium, especially ever since this season started. I mean, Stetson Bennett feels as comfortable in that building. I don't know if it's because Todd Monken opens the playbook for him or what it is, but Stetson is in Mercedes-Benz Stadium like it is a custom tailor-fit suit. He's playing in there as well as he's played at any point this season. So it's Kirby's house right now. I know Ohio State fans are going to travel. They're going to show up well. I would just say Georgia's probably going to show up a little bit better and a little bit louder. And I'll eat my words if I'm wrong about that. And Ohio State has some crazy home field neutral advantage. But right now, I just don't see it happening.
Well, Wes, this is going to be like kindling wood by the time we get through with it, because I'm just going to chop the same wood you did, but in a different way. I'm old enough to remember when Michigan took over the Orange Bowl, and they did take over the Orange Bowl, and it didn't matter. So, you got to really take over a stadium for it to matter. You've got to get 95% of 90 whatever for it to kind of matter from a noise standpoint, from an energy standpoint. I feel like, I honestly don't feel like if you're Ohio State and you get 57% to 43% or 60-40 like Michigan did last year on Georgia, maybe 70-30, that you're just going to have enough juice to kind of change the game there. You get out and support. I'm sure Ohio State fans are going to show up. They've got a fantastic team. It's really talented and one that can beat Georgia if Georgia doesn't bring its A game. But I watched their oldest and most bitter rival that was coming off a dominant win over Ohio State walk into the Orange Bowl last year with a lot of maize and blue, so much maize and blue. And as I've said a few times on this podcast, Georgia painted the back porch red.
They used a roller.
They did.
All right, Jake, take us home.
Yeah, I'm going to chop wood today on Kirby the closer, right? That's what you've got. You've earned the reputation. That's what it's about. That's what people say. You got to close it on Damon Wilson. I projected Damon Wilson in my mock class that I released earlier today over at DawgsHQ. I encourage people to go check both of those mock classes out and see what we think that they're going to finish with. But Damon Wilson, in my mind, there's nothing more important to finish this class out with. Jordan Hall, huge recruit, major need, right? Daniel Harris, a defensive back that they would love to add to this class. Smoke Bowie, another one. These two wide receivers that we're talking about out of the portal, yeah, probably also a huge need. You have got to revamp this edge room in the absence of Nolan Smith and Robert Beal. And I think that Georgia has to take steps forward to do that. Damon Wilson is the missing piece. Samuel Mpimba already in for this class and a tremendous player in his own right. Damon Wilson, number 4 in the nation per on 3 overall. And I think that he's a guy who could really, really step in and make his impact felt early in his career. So in my mind, Kirby, if you want to keep the closer title, that's the guy you got to close on.
All right. Apt, very apt analysis there, Jake Roos. You are the closer of our show. This may be the longest episode we've done, but there's a lot of ground to cover and kind of surprised me because it's not even a game week, but we made a lot out of a little. I'll say we made a lot. I won't say we made a lot out of nothing.
Can you imagine how long this thing would have been if Palmer would have talked in the first 25 minutes?
That's what Palmer was doing. It was load management. He knew that we were going to have to finish strong, and that's what he did. So that was very wise of young Palmer Toms. Y'all hit subscribe on this thing. Sign up for our premium subscription package at DawgsHQ.com. It's not really a package, just one thing. It's $10 right now. Y'all go do that.
It's 4 of us, though.
Right, that is the package. You're right. That's
and you get the whole On 3 network. You can go read all the opposing teams' message boards. So
oh man, listen,
I spend a lot of time on those. I'll be honest.
It's worth $500 a year.
You want to talk about stirring the pot? The pot over here.
It was worth $500 for a Georgia fan to read the Tennessee board after that game. I'm just telling you.
Yeah, we got some screen grabs shared on.
Now, listen, if you want to Venmo me $500, I'll go back and screenshot everything from that day and send it to you. So.
There's a lot to enjoy in the transfer portal, news, nuggets, notes, and of course, National Signing Day a week from right now. We're gonna have to figure out exactly where we're all going. But I know we'll be somewhere, and I know we'll be streaming, and we'll be talking about it, and we'll be breaking down this Dawgs top class, whether or not Justice Haynes is in it. Y'all keep the faith. Kirby the closer is here, as Jake Roos has given him the title.
Yeah, Roos definitely said that if Kirby doesn't land Justice Haynes, he has lost the title of closer.
Yep. So he said he's going to take it. He's going to take it for himself.
Quote.
Quote.
Y'all have a great week. Be good. Peace.